So, welcome to another episode. I thought I'd use today's episode to have a look at some of the video game music CDs that I bought over the years. I bought quite a few of them. And just to talk about video game music in general. I'm a huge fan. So here we go. It's funny, I'm sitting here doing this episode with all my collection of, video game music CDs that I bought over the years. And what I find amazing is that I actually have this many. It's funny, back in 1987, if I was playing a video game and I liked the song of it, I couldn't download it. I couldn't really go and buy the soundtrack anywhere. That was impossible back then. So what I would have to do is do it the old-fashioned medieval way. I would have to hook up my stereo to my video game console, play that song, make sure that my character wasn't attacking anything or anything like that, and press record to actually get that song recorded in. It's funny too when I think back, it was embarrassing. Like, it sounds funny, video games these days are cool. It's cool to like video games, isn't that strange? But back in, say, 84 to 88, 89, video games were looked at as a hobby that only nerdy people were into. So if you were playing video games, you were quietly talking to other people about it. You weren't running around bragging about it. So to be into video game music, to appreciate video game music was very unusual. I remember listening to, I had my tapes of Mario 3's soundtrack, and I loved it. I thought it was so catchy, right? It was such a memorable soundtrack. And I'd have it in my Walkman at school, and I couldn't really talk to many people about what I was listening to, only other people who played video games, but video game music and listening to video game music back then was really unheard of. It wasn't a very cool thing to do. So I have my CD collection here, and I just thought, let's take a look through some of what I have. I can't get through all of it. I'll try to get through some of it. So here's my Final Fantasy CDs. I started off with my Final Fantasy Symphony, Final Fantasy 2 soundtrack, which is actually soundtracks for 1 and 2. Just found my Final Fantasy 3. And then we go into Final Fantasy 4 I got here. Final Fantasy 4 piano music. Final Fantasy V. This is a really nice soundtrack. I really enjoyed that. One of the best soundtracks, I believe, in Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VII soundtrack. Obviously classic. Final Fantasy reunion tracks. Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack. Final Fantasy IX soundtrack. And last but obviously not least, because we got 11 and 12 after this, they're kicking around somewhere, Final Fantasy X. This is a really nice soundtrack as well. Next up is my Dragon Quest music. We started off with Dragon Quest in Concert. Dragon Quest VI, and this is Dragon Quest. This is a big compilation of actually all the soundtracks from 1 to 6. Dragon Quest IV. This is a beautiful soundtrack. Dragon Quest VII here. Dragon Quest the Best. This is some selections of Dragon Quest music. Front Mission soundtrack. It's actually Front Mission's on the DS now. You should check it out. It's got a really nice soundtrack. Very Unknown Square game. Live Alive came out on the Super Famicom back in the day. Now here's one, Chrono Trigger. This actually, I'm embarrassed to admit this cost me like $50, $60. I bought this 3 to 4 months before Chrono Trigger actually came out over here. And I listened to this music every single day and just kind of imagined what this game was going to be like. And I was trying to, listen for the battle music, maybe forest music and stuff like that. I really enjoyed this. I didn't mind paying the money for it. It's so worth it. It's actually the original. It's not some Hong Kong knockoff or something like that. Xenogears soundtrack, absolutely classic, really awesome music. How could I do a review without actually having a Phantasy Star game in here? Phantasy Star Online. The wonderful, wonderful music of Secret of Mana. Another beautiful classic album and one of my favorites. It is the original Street Fighter II music, the arcade music. And I'm reading on the back here, it actually has Final Fight music on here. It has US Navy on here, that's a shooter. Magic Sword, that's a great old arcade game, and Cheeky Cheeky Boys, all by Capcom. This is the original soundtrack that came out in the early 90s for this one. So I got the Grandia soundtracks here, Grandia 1 and 2, really, really nice box sets. There was a lot of music in here. Here we get into some beautiful classics, Wild Arms, the original soundtrack for the PlayStation 1, a beautiful, beautiful soundtrack. And there's some great artwork on the back there as well. And here we have Eternal Arcadia. I'm not much of a fan of this game, It came out, it was one of the first games on the PS2, The Bouncer. But the music is really good. Now here's a funny one. A lot of people don't like this sequel, and that is Chrono Cross. I like the sequel, I like the game, and I really, really like the music. Very memorable. I've sat many times just listening to this soundtrack over the years. It's, I can still listen to it even, today. It's awesome. So here we have Parasite Eve 1 and 2. Classic game on the PlayStation 1. Love the series. Very atmospheric music, very creepy, very surreal. I'm a big fan of this music. Really, really nice. Shenmue, a fantastic series, fantastic music released on the Dreamcast. Some songs were written by Yuzo Koshiro. He did Bare Knuckles or Streets of Rage over here. Here's a soundtrack that is timeless, it is ageless, it is Final Fantasy Tactics. It is awesome. Highly, highly recommended. Obviously in my collection I had to have Zuntata, and I got quite a few of their soundtracks here. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Nobody can own a video game music collection and not own that soundtrack. Also, I have Dracula X remixes, very, very nice. Really highly recommend that as well. Sonic Adventure soundtrack, I think this is an underappreciated soundtrack. I still love listening to this. I have a lot of Neo Geo soundtracks. I have tons of those, actually quite a few down here. Wow, sorry guys, I could only get through probably 1/3, 1/4 of my music CDs here. I just wanted to show you a little bit of what I had in the way of music CDs. It's amazing to me, I can pick up any of these soundtracks, put them in the CD player, listen to them, and it takes me back. It takes me back to that first time I played the game. And yeah, it brings back just a flood of wonderful video game memories. Nowadays, anybody can download any song they want, any MP3 of any soundtrack, 2 months before the game comes out. And I can appreciate that. But there's something about actually having the CDs as well and being able to listen to them. So anyways guys, hopefully you got a kick out of seeing some of my CDs and just talking about video game music in general. And you know what guys, why don't you down below tell me some of your favorite video game soundtrack albums. How about that? That sounds like a good idea. So anyways guys, till next time.